Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Inside Movies Galore, where I am starting to do reviews on this channel. And last night I watched three versions of Les Miserables, Victor Hugo's novel, which is about a man named Jean Valjean who stole a little bit of bread and was jailed. And then he tried to escape several times, and ultimately he spent 19 years in prison. And then he was let out. Um, and then he escaped parole. He ran into a priest who basically bought his soul. And then he ultimately became an honest man. Now, in being chased by a jailer by the name of Inspector Javert, he turned a blind eye to an employee of his while he was mayor of a town. So the young woman who was paying for her child to be fed and clothed by a couple by the name of Thénardier, she was thrown out to the streets without him fully knowing. And so by the time he realized it, the woman was dying. And so he made a promise to find her little girl, Cosette. And he ultimately did. Now, Inspector Javert, he is also still hunting him. So ultimately, years pass, and Cosette grows up. She falls in love with a young man by the name of Marius, and he is part of a group of radicals who is about to start a fight with their government over freedom. So there is a big battle, and there is romance, and there is multitudes of chances for revenge, but ultimately it's about a man's journey and into and out of hatred. And it's a story that I know well. Now, in this version, Anthony Perkins, who played in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, he plays a very stiff Javert. So, but there are times where he is observing the man who is playing Jean Valjean, who was the man who was in question. He became an honest man, as we see. But the differences in this particular version is that normally in most of the versions, you do not see the part where he actually steals, a loaf of bread. And in this very beginning, we see that. Another difference that I see and hear is that the prison that in which he was almost entombed in, it was by the name of Toulon. Well, they worked in a rock quarry and made pearls made from this certain kind of rock. And I forget exactly what it was, but ultimately that's kind of what turned Inspector Javert onto the trail of Jean Valjean when he was the role of the mayor. So they always have this confrontation going on. And there is a particular obsession going on in this relationship between jailer and jailee that is very unique, and for some reason, it is probably one of the best prison movies that you could probably know. At least that is relatively older. Now, the other thing that I thought that was unique is that you get to see a very young Ian Holmes playing the role of Thenardier. Now, in the musical, which eventually I will get to in another review, in the musical, the Thenardiers have more of a bigger role, but in here, they only have the role of being the people who have taken care of the uh, young girl Cosette for many years, and have taken the money from the mother, and I believe that they have been using it unwisely. They always said that it was because the child was sick, but I think it was more for their greedy intent, because um, um, they were very mean to her. Now, in this version, you do not see uh, another daughter or whatnot, but from what I understand, the Thenardiers had at least two daughters, from what I understand. I wasn't sure how I would enjoy this adaptation, because at first, when I saw the main actor, um, I felt like he was kind of a pretty boy in the beginning, but then his hair actually got longer while he was in prison, and then afterwards they kind of made him look more like he had, you know, grain in his look, like they had added a roughness to his, looks. So it was definitely a different adaptation. I thought for a TV movie, I mean, I believe that this was made for educational purposes a little bit, because in the very beginning, you get to see some wording that you should at least know this story well. And I thought it was a relatively decent adaptation. Now, in all of the versions so far that I have seen, all of the times of the years that have advanced over time, like from what I understand, he was in the prison for 19 years. But then ultimately, like 6 years passed here, or 8 years passed here, or 5 years later. Well, in each film, the years are different. Other than that, I think this was a relatively decent production. Um, you should definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. It was filmed in the year 1978. I believe it was a relatively decent adaptation. And the characters were relatively likable. My biggest problem, I guess, was that the Javert character was relatively so stiff. You didn't really see much emotion from this character. And I understand that Anthony Perkins, well, I guess I was not used to this kind of role from him. It seemed very, very stiff, like I don't know how to describe it, but you can definitely check the film out. In any case, hopefully you enjoyed this review. Um, it was definitely um, intriguing and different, and I thought the two roles uh, kind of were always significant. And hopefully you've enjoyed my review of this made for TV movie.